Hey guys, Cheryl Nemhart here. I am so excited to have you with me for this next episode. Guys, I've been waiting for this conversation with this person because I knew that it would be out of the box, unorthodox, culture shifting, real, raw, and honest. Coming up next, we are speaking with my friend and brother, Pastor Chris Chase. He is the lead pastor of the New Market Parish and Meeting House, and we are talking about what it really means to be a post-resurrection society as believers. I'm calling it He's Alive, Now What? And we are tackling everything. We are lifting up the covers and talking about cancel culture, celebrity Christendom, performative Christianity, y'all. And also 12 months after George Floyd, where is the church now in the area of inclusion, diversity, racial reconciliation? You got to listen on all available podcasts or watch it on my YouTube channel, and I'll see you on the path.
You're listening to On the Path podcast with Cheryl Nemhart. Follow Cheryl Nemhart on all social media platforms.
Hey guys, we are here. This is the moment I have been waiting for. Let me tell you something. This incredible guest, I have been trying to find a way to get him on this show. I'm talking about the one and only Pastor Chris Chase, who is the lead pastor of the New Market Parish at Meeting House. Chris, what's up?
What is going on, sister? It is. We are finally doing this. I tell you, when I tell you that every day I open up my phone and wait for this call and go, oh, maybe it'll happen tomorrow. Maybe it'll happen tomorrow. And here it's happening right now. Let's go. Let's go.
I love it. And you were like, yeah, I got called up.
Called up. Finally, is waiting for it. Here we go, though. Here we go, sis.
Oh my goodness. Chris, you are, and you know, I forgot to mention, which I need to again, is that one thing I love about you is you're so versatile. You also co-host an incredible podcast show called House of Common, where you chop it up with some incredible guys there, and you do not hold back. And so one thing I love about you is that you are super brilliant, well-educated, but as raw as it gets. And I love it.
Real knows real though. And so let me say that, like, real recognizes real. Like, that's,
yes.
As children of hip hop, we would appreciate that statement. So real recognizes real. So what you see in me, I see in you. And that's why when we sit down together, whether it's on phone, just sending messages back and forth, or in the same room together, it works, because real always recognizes real. Game recognizes game, for real.
I love it. And you know, I could not imagine a better person to talk to, because I gotta say, and I know it sounds like we're having a big gush session, just bear with us, but I truly do love the way you think, and you're an outside of the box thinker, and I gravitate to those people. And so when I wanted to have this conversation about the stages after Easter, the world, the life, the path after Easter, there was no better person. So let me kick it off with this. So as you know, the title of this podcast is He Lives. What now? And this, and not in an irreverent way, but for people that are like, how do I pull this down? What does this really mean? And for those that are seeking and those that are challenging their own faith and maybe examining themselves, this is the conversation for you. So we've just literally come off the heels of one of our most important central holidays of our faith: Easter, Good Friday, Palm Sunday, the whole Holy Week. I got to ask you, I guess, to start, let's just ground it here. What does Easter mean to you? And how does it hit differently now in light of this whole year?
Well, for starters, Easter is always about possibility, right? In my backyard, we have this tree, and it's starting to bloom now. You know, the leaves are starting to come. And a couple of months from now, it's going to mean that I have to rake leaves. It's going to be an annoyance in a couple of months from now as the leaves fall. But right now, to go outside, stand on my patio, and to see this possibility. Easter is always about that. We go from this dark moment of Good Friday, where it seems like all hope is lost. We don't know that Jesus is getting the keys. We don't know as humanity in that moment that Jesus is actually winning in death.
Come on. Yeah.
What we see is the game is over, right? Shout outs to Carmen and the champion and the countdown from 10 to 1, right? That sort of thing, right?
Love it.
But now we know that it's about possibility, that when he rises again on Easter Sunday, life is new. Not only is sin defeated and death defeated, but life is made new. So when I think of Easter, I think of the idea of possibility. It's about the first. It's about what we can become. It's about what we can do. It's about who we can be. And in light of, man, this is our second Easter in a pandemic, right? And last year we were kind of like, what is happening? It's gonna it'll be over in the summertime. And here we are a year later, and the perspective of what can be means so much more because of what we haven't been able to have, because of what we haven't been able to do. The possibility of what it means for my 12-year-old daughter, and for my 9-year-old son, for my wife, for my job, for all these sort of things are that meaningful to me. What does the next step mean? So when I look at Easter now, it means so much more than it has before, because we're supposed to be a post-Easter people, but we've been living a Good Friday year.
Ooh,
we've been living a Good Friday year. You know what I'm saying?
Please do unpack that.
Well, the idea of it feels like all is lost.
Yeah.
We've just kind of carried this sort of idea of, so we're faith people. We know what it's like to work in or serve churches. Do we meet? Do we not meet? Do we do this? Do we do that? Do we believe this? Do we believe that? Back and forth. And we're arguing along with that. You talked about it at the jump, the back end of May. We are just kind of reeling from Ahmaud Arbery, the death of George Floyd. We were reminded of Breonna Taylor and her death in March, I believe. Yep. And then we're kind of walking in just with all this heaviness. We're Canadians on this show, but you can't help but feel the vitriol and the fire of what's going on in the States as they were leading into an election. And there's all this Good Friday, all this loss. And I always think to myself, the worst day for me in the Holy Week is the Saturday. The reason why is there's nothing like waking up to loss, because you wake up and that moment where you kind of forget that how bad the day was before, and then it kind of hits you at a certain moment. Like imagine being the disciples, imagine being Mary and the women on Saturday going like, he's not here yet. What does this mean? And it just kind of felt, this year has felt like Good Friday and Holy Saturday or Silent Saturday has just been 365 days. And so Easter means we can believe again, we can dream again, we can hope again.
I got to jump in because this Silent Saturday really resonates with me. And I feel like you're right. We're either stuck in the suffering, in feeling overwhelmed, suffered, just torn down, or we're in this place of, it is what I'm believing the real thing. Like, am I wasting my time? Like, let's talk real talk here and not sugarcoat it. Do I believe what I believe? Is it worth it all? Like, you start doing all of these sort of big, like, spiritual inventories, and you're watching what seems to be a lack of God moving.
Yes.
Which is that Saturday feeling you were talking about.
The pain of, how great the pain of searing loss, in the song, How Deep the Father's Love for Us, that loss of possibility, that loss of maybe this wasn't what I thought it was going to be. Maybe this is all that there is.
Right.
One of my favorite movies from back in the day, there's a line says, and this is the title of the movie, maybe this is as good as it gets. And you're kind of like, well, if that's what it is, then which is why, like, depending on which gospel narrative you read, when Jesus shows up to the disciples and kind of walks through the wall, sup homies, there's this mixture of like, what is happening? Because they've been hiding, they've been in mourning, they've gone through the Silent Saturday. Yeah. And now they're kind of like, they're smack in the face of like, he is who he said he was the entire time. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. The man that you're looking for, Mary, he's not here. And so when I look at, to kind of close off that moment, like when I look at Easter, I'm reminded that he changes everything, not just the stuff that I like or not like, but everything. And
love that.
That's to reevaluate everything.
Love it. Love it. That's the t-shirt, and I make t-shirts. I'm gonna get one for you.
Let's go.
Finally. He changes everything. Listen, oh man, 2,000 years plus at this time, you have a group of followers, and as we said, having seen visitations, touch the hands, heard his voice, now reignited in their faith, super on fire for God, bold, resolved in their belief and stance for him, even united. Now it brings them together, and so now what we're seeing is sort of the first. It's like the gen, right, the 1.0 of post-resurrection people on fire for God and literally flipping the world upside down. Now let's fast forward to us so many Easters later with just the hope and promise, and as you said, watching the landscape of this Good Friday suffering of the world. Are we a post-resurrection people in comparison to that first generation?
You really want to ask that question, eh? Okay.
I do.
Okay, so I think there's a couple of points to this. I think that I will say yes and no. Now, before you say that's a cheat answer, let me kind of clarify. Because I think there is, in many Christians and in many Christian organizations, there is a reignition of faith in the midst of this pandemic. Let's put it into 2020, 2021 terms. There is a faith, there is a resolve. We're seeing people pray more. We're still seeing people get saved. We're still seeing miracles take place. We're still seeing people give and serve and do more for others. And we're also seeing people be extremely careless, be extremely selfish, be extremely hurtful, and even hateful, and not mindful of this post-resurrection story that we live. That's now. Acts chapter 5 shows us two people by the name of Ananias and Sapphira, married couple, who are legitimate post-resurrection people, only a few years removed from Jesus rising from the dead, walking on the road to Emmaus, hey, Thomas, check this, all this sort of stuff. And then, going up to heaven, preparing a place for us. And they, as post-resurrection people, choose to rob the people of God, and they die for their efforts. So are we a post-resurrection people? Yes. But we're not at the same point too, if depending on how you, if the idea of being a post-resurrection person is living a perfect life, then that's not who we are. It's just not, because we still have these screw ups. I mean, look at just how Christians are on social media at each other when it comes to various small little things. But we are post-resurrection people in that a lot of people, many people, I have to believe this, are trying their best to be like what Jesus has asked them to be. So it's a mixed bag. Because I believe, like, I know you. I know how you live out your faith. You are a post-resurrection, post-Easter Christ follower. You are not caught up in Christendom, which is a man-made thing to kind of promote Christ, which is more so to promote politics and power, right? I think when we say post-resurrection, are we looking at post-resurrection Christianity being like Christ, or we're looking at post-resurrection Christendom, which would say, I'm going to cut corners in the name of Christ?
Wow. So you see a marked difference between a lived out Christianity and Christendom.
I said what I said.
Oh, yes. Yes. Not even on my list of questions, but we're going there.
Let's go for it.
Give me just a Pastor Chris Chase working of why you say that. Christianity to you is what, and what you're surveying of Christendom is what?
Well, just the books I've been reading recently, the marking of Christendom has been more so tied to the idea of Western evangelicalism. So if you read books like Canoeing the Mountains, or if you read a fantastic book, Jesus and John Wayne by Kristen Dumez, Pray Tell by a friend of yours and somebody who I'm getting to know, Tiffany Bloom, you see this idea of Christendom where and we'll talk about this later on, but like that protects its stars, that promotes itself embedded within politics and power in order to kind of be very much like how Constantine said, I'm going to put the cross on my shield and we're going to move in the name of Jesus and conquer countries and conquer territories and make Christianity the main thing. Christianity is willing to put on the basin, is willing to be on the lowest spot and serve and see life change and not force it. Christendom is, we are going to be a force to reckon with. And now what you're seeing, the conversation about post-Christendom is a desire for the good old days. Well, Cheryl, you and I look the same. The good old days were really good for the both of us.
They were not good at all. No,
they were not good at all. But the idea of Christendom really, really harpens the idea that it's really good for some and not good for all. Christianity is Jesus is good for all. So we're going to do and say what we can to promote Jesus and not some of his characteristics that really make life better for us and not for other people.
We were speaking, you and I, in just kind of pre-interview, and you had some incredible thoughts around the fact that the church is actually, as we've been just talking about, regressing, you said, in ways similar to looking like people living under the law. That hit me between my eyes, because here we are supposed to be in this sort of, you know what I mean, new dispensation. But here we are as a church, if we are taking true stock, we are more like the people Jesus opposed.
Yeah.
So please walk us through, your thoughts on that.
So to start, we have to understand that the people of God, there's the people of God, and then there's the religious leaders who upheld the law. Okay.
Yeah.
So for the people of God, that was what we would consider church for them. That was their ability to worship. That was their ability to connect with God, was the law. It was given to them as a precursor to Jesus then being this new covenant of all this sort of stuff. That was their way. The problem was that the religious leaders at the time, they added so many things that it became about performance, and it would be about performance review, and it became about your actions more than your heart. And it would confuse the people, because the people themselves, whether they had a lot or whether they didn't, whether they only had 2 copper coins, they wanted to know Yahweh. They want to know God, but the religious leaders made it so they put rules in it that would separate families, that could kill people even. Yeah. And what we've done, and so when I say we've regressed back to this idea of the law, we have made living for Jesus performance-based. We have made living for Jesus performance-based. So let me put it this way. And if you're a listener or if you're a viewer and this is you, I don't know you, so I'm not insulting you. But performance is every day letting people know that you're doing devotions on social media instead of just doing them and letting your life shine. Performance is letting people know this is what's going on in my life when you're not even really actually dealing with what's going on in your, like, dealing with it personally.
Can I throw one in?
Jump it. Go in.
Performance Christianity is saying, look at me. I'm feeding the poor. I'm taking these beautiful structured shots with these third
children
world
on my lap.
Make sure I get the light. Is it the golden hour?
And so what we've done is, and so when we're people who are living under the law, what we've done is we've kind of, it's like we're constantly handing over a test. Did I pass? Did I do exactly enough? And we're not even doing it really for Jesus. We're doing it for the Christendom part, for other people to approve us. And if certain people approve us, and I fall prey to this sometimes too, if like, oh, that person likes it, okay, that means I'm on the right track. As opposed to you letting your light shine. You know what I mean? That they may praise your Father in heaven, just living the life. So when we're living under the law, we're less like the woman putting in 2 copper coins. We're less like the person beating our breast saying, God, forgive me, a sinner. We're more like the person praying, going, thank God I'm not like that guy. We're more like, in that parable, we're more like that. We're more like the 10 virgins who didn't have enough oil. We're more like the ones who, when Jesus tells us the parable of the wedding reception, we're more like the ones who made excuses.
Yep. Yep.
I can't go because I got this, I got that, I got the other thing. That's what. So when I say we're living like we're back in that way, that in the law, what I don't mean is that we are neglecting the idea of worship. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is we are back into this idea of performance-based Christendom as opposed to heart-based Christianity.
And we can get caught up in what I call Christianese, where we can say these sort of big things like, we've got resurrection power, and we've live in the power of the resurrection. Like, what does that mean for someone who is coming into faith, tiptoeing on the fence of faith, maybe wounded and it's been a while, so all Sunday school references are all they have, or someone who's just listening happened to stumble in? Like, what does it mean? What does it look like? And they'll frame it to live in the power of his resurrection. If there was a guide that I could go to in the library or buy at a store that said like post-resurrection guide to living, and I flip the pages, break it down, what does it look like?
Well, I think the easy answer, and we talked about this, on pre-show sort of thing, is they say like, just be like Jesus, right? And that's what we often will do in churches. We'll just kind of say, look at the life of Jesus, study the book of John. You'll have a real good idea of who Jesus is. Read through Luke. Mark is a fast book. Read through Matthew to kind of get an idea of, and then we'll just kind of say, and you're kind of picking out these characteristics. Right. You pick out like the story that you like, and then you'll say like, well, I can do this because Jesus turned a table over, and taking things completely out of context. So when I look at like a post-resurrection life or a guide to it, I think of the parts of Jesus and the parts that his followers therein in Acts and Paul's writings and Peter's writings and John's writings that they kind of exemplified. When Paul says follow me like I follow Christ, it didn't mean that Paul was perfect, right? Like, it didn't mean that. Like, Paul would admit in different points in his letters, like, I could have done this differently, or this, that, the other thing. Like, so when I look at it, I think Jesus was a servant. Service is not highly touted. How do we know that now? We see young men and young women doing service work right now at cash registers all over our province, all over our cities, and they're being yelled at by people because they're simply following rules that are being asked for of them, and
that's good, Chris.
Horribly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like in North America, especially.
Yeah.
Like the idea of service is not highly touted, but Jesus was a servant. The Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve.
Yeah.
Be a ransom for many.
That's
so
good.
when I the first thing I'm like is service, because it allows me to see somebody as myself. Like I better than myself. Sure. Like I'm not sure the right wording there, but I can see somebody and go like, we're in the same boat here. We're in the same boat here. And so when I look at it, those like the characteristics of Jesus that I love are his kindness, his forgiveness, the fact that he gets turned, his friends turn on him and they run from him, and yet he loves them and he approaches them and he forgives them and he empowers and he pushes them to greater things. His willingness for diversity on his squad, on his team, his value of women and their voices, that it's women who are the first viewers of the fact that they're the first gospel speakers. He is not dead. He is alive, happen to be women. All of those things. So do you value people who are different than you? Do you value other genders? Do you value other voices? Do you value other stories?
Yeah.
That's the guide. Do you value other people? Because Jesus died because of that value. Don't make me preach, Cheryl, because I'll do it.
We're going to collect the offering at this time. I'm just going to call the ushers to come. And if you could put the organ in E flat right quick, that'd be great. That could preach right there. And you know what? And if Jesus loved them and died for them, then who are we? Who are we?
Okay, let's go.
Okay, so I want to ask you about in light of the life of, the teachings of Jesus, the ministry of Jesus, what do you think he and his followers, how would they view something that's very troublesome right now in our ecosystem, which is cancel culture and celebrity Christendom. We're going there. So let's do one at a time. Cancel culture in this post-resurrection place. We as the church, we, even people in the world, you can take it even wider, but we are pretty brutal at it ourselves. In light of who Jesus has taught us to be. Please speak.
So, all right, let's talk cancel culture. All right, which ironically could get us canceled for this conversation. That's the irony of cancel culture, right? Like, is that like anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of public opinion and social media.
Right.
So when we look at the life of Jesus, when we look at the entire story, like let's look at Paul.
Yeah.
Let's look at Saul, who becomes Paul.
Yes.
Paul is the perfect example of somebody who should have been canceled.
Right.
We meet him in, I believe it's Acts chapter 8. Mm-hmm. He is standing, or Acts chapter 8. We can't remember the two, but he is standing at the stoning of Stephen. He's standing there, kind of giving his okay to Stephen being killed. We then learn later on that that's his job. He goes and he rips families apart. He either puts people in jail or puts them to death for being a believer in Jesus. Yeah. He says like he did this with zeal. He thought that was the right thing for him to do in light of this law that he was living under. He thought that was what he was supposed to do. Yeah. Right. He then has this Damascus Road experience, Acts chapter 9. Mm-hmm. His life has changed. He spends years recalibrating his brain and his heart and unlearning and relearning who God is, who Jesus is. And then he goes out and he begins to preach. People are afraid of him because they're like, yo, fam, I don't even know if we should trust this guy. Last time he was here, he arrested my mother and my grandmother and my uncle. And I want him in my house. That sort of thing, right? And he knows this. And he says, I'm going to let my life speak for itself. Yeah. He then, as we know now, he writes half of the New Testament. Yes. He is the father of systematic theology for us. Mm-hmm. There are some denominations who literally build their lives off of the words of Paul more than the words of Jesus.
Yes, the Pauline Gospels, yeah.
Right? But if we're looking at that in 2021, Paul should be canceled. He spoke ill of Jesus. He arrested people. Yeah. Right. But we, in light of what Jesus did in his life, we were willing to take, and because he was willing to own that part of his story, we now his words are gospel. No pun intended. Yeah. It's this weird thing now where Christians have been doing cancel culture for years. Christians canceled, in many cases, canceled the civil rights movement. Christians were willing to cancel Martin Luther King in the 1960s. Yeah. They were willing to cancel anybody who spoke for gender equality, because in Christendom, it was very complementarianism. It was very men speak and women serve. Women are directors and coordinators. They're not pastors and leaders. Right. That sort of thing. And anything more than that was not like all this sort of stuff. Right. We were willing to cancel art. We were willing to cancel commerce. We were willing to cancel anything that didn't look like us. And then we were willing to fight if somebody was willing to cancel us, because if you're canceling us, then it's because we're telling the truth. Oh, yeah. And in some cases, 2 + 2 = 4. I understand that. But in some cases, 2 + 2 = 5. 2 + 2 = 6. Right. And what I love about Jesus would sit in conversations with people who weren't like him, and he would bring out more than just canceling them. He should have canceled the woman at the well in John 4. He should have canceled the woman caught in adultery. He should have canceled Nicodemus. There's some people that he should have canceled, and he listened and he brought something out of them. The problem with cancel culture is we always say that you are not the sum total of your worst days, and you're not the sum total of your best days. But in cancel culture, what we say is your worst day is the end of you. Yeah. And there's no room for redemption. And I understand that there's room for at certain points if you have done unmentionables or certain things that like your platform, like I get that. But let's start from the area of grace and hope.
Yeah.
and kind of let that kind of bounce stuff out. But then, which then
So
moves
good.
into celebrityism.
Yeah. And before you get there, can I say one thing that just came to me really clearly? It was just a sentence, but cancel culture cancels grace.
It does every time. Every time. And like my buddy and I, so my buddy Eric Verslewis and I, we have a meeting house adjacent pod that we're working on called the Chris Tucson Eric podcast. So it's just the two of us having a 9-episode talk about this sort of topic.
Yeah.
And one of the things we're talking about was like, what would have happened if I had Twitter in 1993 as a 13-year-old kid, just say, we're not doing this podcast. Right? Because I'm 13 years old. I don't know any better.
Right. You wouldn't be a pastor if somebody looked
I wouldn't
at
be a
those
pastor.
tweets.
Like,
right.
But you know what I would be? I'd be an angry blogger. I'd be an angry tweeter talking about stuff.
Right.
If I was held to what I said and did then. Right. I'm very fortunate. There's a lot of people who are very fortunate about this.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. All of us are in some respects.
And so take us now into celebrity Christendom, which I know is a big thorn in your side. Talk to me about how we got here and what you think the heart of God would be towards all of this stuff we're seeing.
Oh, so Jesus has these crowds, right? He's preaching at these crowds, and then he would go by himself.
Right.
Jesus would have these moments where he'd be in a crowd and then he would like duck away. And you're kind of like, social anxiety? Is there, is he just, but it's like, he's just not about that life. Guys, that's what, when it comes down to, he's just not about the life. He recognizes who he is. He has, he's in full with his relationship with the Father and the Holy Spirit. He has this crew. He's good.
Yeah. He's not moved by the crowds.
He's not moved by them. He's like if he's good, if it's one person at a well or one person in the cloak of darkness, or whether it's a whole group of people, he's fine.
Yeah.
But we, in our celebrityism, we need heroes. We need them. And so we build people up. We build up the right preachers. We build up the right writers.
It's so dangerous.
The bloggers, the podcasters.
Yeah.
And we build these people up. And the reality is all of these people have one fall in them. And then it's a wrap, because we love redemption stories too. Right. But what we do is, in building these people up, the only space they can go is down. And so we have leaders who cancel and then fall and then they get canceled. So Ravi Zacharias is one. John Christ is another. Mark Driscoll is another. Perry Noble is another. The point there is that like we build these people up because we need them. And this is our history.
Yes.
We've done this. We did this with Billy Graham and his son. I go, for 4 years, the Americans did this with Donald Trump, and we ignore certain things because we need these heroes.
Yes.
And we allow them to say and do whatever they want to do.
Yeah. And they get a pass.
And they get a pass. They get a pass because they are representing us. They are representing Christendom. They are the Trojan horse. Yes, they might say and do these things, but look at what we get to then promote in light of that. And guess who? And look at how we get to cancel people who disagree with us, because this is who we have on our side. And so this idea of cancel culture and celebrity Christendom, they go hand in hand because both of them are created by man.
Oh, so good. Yeah. So good.
And it's bothersome to me because we all fall prey to it. With every Instagram follower, we all fall prey to feeling ourselves a little bit too much. And the only space you can go is down.
Yeah. And both of those things do not reflect the heart of the Father, and they misrepresent the gospel. Because the gospel is about restoration and repair and grace. And it is about all men having all things in common, equality, equal standing and footing. And so when you have these two things, it just does so much damage, I feel, in the body of Christ and in the church.
Well, what it does is when somebody, like it just in any profession, if somebody, what we would say in my former Pentecostal spaces, when somebody has a fall, it then darkens it for everybody else.
Right.
like the whole bad apple sort of thing. Well, if they're all that sort of way, and it makes it harder for somebody who's been on the fence, somebody who's spiritually curious, to want to jump in, because I want to trust, I want to believe, but then I read about this. Or look at the church too, in the Me Too,
Right.
what we've seen as we've read about spiritual leaders taking advantage of young women and young men and destroying their lives. Why would I trust a God who? And because we put God in that same box with these people, and that's not God's heart at all. That's not God's heart at all. But when we promote these celebrities to be like God, that's the result.
That's the result.
When they are less than God, like.
Come on. Oh, so good. I could stay here forever. So good. But we've got about 4 more feet to dig.
Let's go.
And we are going to dig now. So, Chris, in the past 12 months, okay, so the church we've had to, I would say it's been a rude awakening, but we've had to wake up concerning the issues of racism, injustice, racial reconciliation. And the church has also had to have a proverbial mirror put up to it. And we've had to look at ourselves as to our stance on it, our heart, our role that we've played in all of it. I'd love to know 12 months later from the big explosion, and it's ironic that you and I are here literally 12 months later. Yeah. Where are we now, and where do we need to be as a church in the area of racial equality, racial unity, and reconciliation? Yeah. Be brutally honest. You don't know any other way to be.
I'm trying. Like I've read this question a couple of times, and suddenly now I'm really getting. I'm very sorry, Cheryl. This is not professional. This is not professional.
No,
should have shed my tears earlier.
No, it's honest. It's what we need to hear.
This isn't for many of us. And I know that we're a minority, but there's many of us. This isn't new. And there's been a cry in the wilderness for a long time.
Come on. Yes.
It's not something that is it's a bittersweet thing, because nobody was really moved when Breonna Taylor died. People didn't really care to a point when Philando Castile was killed in his car in front of his girlfriend and her daughter.
Yeah.
Or Eric Gardner. People were kind of trivial about Tamir Rice. They really didn't matter.
Yeah. Sandra Bland,
another. Like you and I, we can play catch with the amount of names.
Yes, we can.
The two of us, right?
Yeah.
But
that 9 minutes and 29 seconds, which we now found out it's not 8:26, by the way.
It's longer than that, right?
9:29 shook the world and shook the church.
And it took a global pandemic. It took all of us being at home. It took all of us being able to see this footage. It took all of these bittersweet right things at the right time. And this poor man who ended up being a catalyst, not a martyr, because a martyr chooses to die.
Yeah,
a martyr chooses to die, right? Like
the he was kind of like a lamb to the slaughter.
Yes,
not saying it all like Christ, but just his death ushered in this whole new movement, and it's so unfortunate.
Yeah. And so like it again, the civil rights movement in the 60s, the church was behind it. The church, I mean behind it, I mean like they were behind the times. They were not for a lot of them were thinking like Martin Luther King is a communist. He has nothing to do with Jesus and all this sort of stuff. This same thing about the 70s and the crack. Well, it's the blacks' fault. Black on black violence, which is a made up myth because we don't say white on white violence.
Right.
Don't get me started. All these sort of things. And then there was this reckoning where a year ago, if I posted something on social media about someone else, I would have gotten, well, do the stats, man, and look at this, man. And there was more allies. there's more allies. And I think, you know, like, I don't know how many, we probably could, like, what church do you talk at? Oh man, I was there the week before. Blah, 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 blah. What podcast did you do? Oh, I did the podcast too. Blah, blah, blah. Like all this sort of thing where like every Black person that had a platform was like on someone's church or someone's whatever. I think where we are now is there's a mixture of hope and fatigue. Because, you know, there hasn't, you know, like, because people they care, but they've also moved on with their lives.
Yeah.
You know, like they care. Yeah, they're allies. Yeah, they're allies. But, you know, this pandemic and anti-vaxxing and masking and everything else like that. And there's so many other things that are happening in the world. And, you know, like in rigged elections and blah, 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 blah. So there's a mixture of feelings. I think where we need to go is, I'm not saying that we need to. I sounded so polished to every other question. This is the one that bothers me. And it's not because of the question; it's because of how much work needs to be done.
Yeah.
But I think where we need to go is we need to be willing to have more uncomfortable, tough conversations.
Yeah.
I think that along with that, people like you and I, people like my friends in the House of Common show, and others don't need to be the judge, jury, and executioner of all Blackness, of all Black story, right? But we need to, all of us as the church, stand and say, we're not for this, and not kind of say like, we're not for this, but we're also for the military. We're not for this, but we're also for, like, no. We're like, at some point you got to put a line in the sand. Yeah. Right. And ask for reform and different things. Where we go next, a lot of it will depend on this Derek Chauvin case, truthfully. Oh, Lord, and I remember I put on Twitter the other day, I remember being a kid sitting with my parents during the equivalent of Rodney King. Of Rodney King. I remember Rodney King. Yes. 92. Yes. I remember it was a Wednesday, and then the Wednesday to Friday were the riots. My parents literally being like, if you choose violence, right? Like that's what they, like in 2021, they go, you choose violence, is what happens. Yeah. And I am preparing myself. This is sad. I'm preparing myself for the people find Derek Chauvin not guilty on all 3 charges. And then what the conversation is like there. And that's just the reality. I hate to be the bearer of bad sort of whatever.
Oh, I know. It's every person of color's nightmare right now. It's every Black person's nightmare right now that even visibly shown, not in a moment of rage, not in heated passion, but a slow, methodical lynching on tape could shake the world to the point that Black Lives Matter protests happening in Moscow, in Germany, in Dubai, people like the globe cried out, and it's still not going to be enough. The messaging from that, I don't know if we can come back from.
And then the arguments of, and you saw this, you heard this, you were probably on the receiving end of it. Well, if you're a Christian, I don't know how you can support the Black Lives Matter movement. If you're this, I don't know how you can do these sort of things, how you can stand. And it's like you are mistaking, you are taking 1 or 2 parts of an organization and then you're completely just canceling it, while at the same time supporting a Christendom idea that has so much corruption found in it, simply because of the name Jesus in it.
Well, I'm going to say something, and again, you can at me. I'm all good with it. My skin is so thick, it fills this room.
She wants that smoke, people. She wants that smoke.
But, the origin story of that is that Black Lives Matter and Black Panthers and even pro-LGBTQ organizations and all these sort of movements that have had to stand up and cry out and defend themselves are there because the church has not been. They are there because the church has been silent. They are there because the church has not stepped into the fullness of who she was designed to be, to lead the charge in unifying and amplifying and advocating and speaking for the voiceless. We have not done our job, and what you are seeing is the monster you've created.
Yes. And amen. Now we call the band up, and now we, if you need prayer, come to the altar, come to the front, that sort of thing. That is so true. when the church abdicates its responsibility, when it abdicates its role,
you're going to get these variations.
Somebody's going to fill the gap in. the idea, the church, Christendom, post Christendom, we look like a jealous spouse. You know what I'm saying? We look like a jealous spouse, like we don't want to put the work in, but we're mad that if somebody's gone, we just act that way, like the jealous best friend who's not going to put in the work, but who's going to be jealous that you went and put in the work yourself. Yeah. So we don't want to be on the cutting edge of social justice.
Wow.
We don't want to be on the cutting edge of racial reconciliation, but we're mad that somebody else wants to, and then we're willing to cancel them. Yeah. We don't want to be on the side when it comes to mental health.
Right.
But then we get mad when other agencies take on a little bit of that sort of stuff.
Right.
And like, but that's who we are. Are you going to do something about it? No.
Right. And not just get mad, but criticize every single thing that they do because they're not doing it the way we would like to see them do it. And so it's six of one. What is it? 6 of one, half dozen of the other. I would love for you to end this conversation. You know, we've held our family to task, but let's leave with hope. What would you say to those who are struggling, who have walked through this conversation and said, yes, yes, yes. And that's why I'm just not, I can't do it. Any words for those that are struggling?
I would start by saying this. The beginning of the pandemic, during all those conversations I had with different churches, I was out of work. I lost my job on April 24th of 2020. Just job cuts, saving money, all this sort of stuff. So I know what it's like to walk through 4 months of pandemic, not knowing what I was going to do beyond a CERB check. For those of you listening in the States, we were given a certain amount of, that was our stimmy. That was our stimmy in Canada, right?
Yeah.
To kind of clarify that. But I know what it's like to not know. I know what it's like to, as a parent, when our kids were doing school online and not knowing what that was going to be like, and all this worry. It's not abstract for me. Sometimes we as Christian leaders, as leaders who happen to be Christian, maybe phrase that way, we seem like we're above the fray. Like we don't know what it's like to actually struggle, and we're always giving advice because we know better. We who are enlightened can teach you. Nah, man, I was in that muck like everybody else.
Broke like a church mouse. Yeah,
broke like a church mouse. Waiting in line for groceries at Walmart like everybody else. Yeah, not sure what I was gonna do. I get that.
Yeah,
the thing that carried me was the love of God, which is found in Christ Jesus, the love of my family, and the care and concern of my close peoples. So in the midst of this, you need to know you are loved by God.
Come on.
Now, is that love going to necessarily put food on your table? It depends on what your job is, right? Is that love going to but it's the hope.
Yeah.
Easter like I said at the beginning of our conversation, Easter doesn't take away the pain, but at least gives you something you can hold on to.
Yes. And it's that hope that sustains us.
It's the hope that sustains you. It's the hope that I don't know how I'm going to get by, but I can hold on to this with the nails on the board. Hold on to it. Hold on to that hope. Find your family, or if you don't have a family, immediate or extended, find a close group of people who are able to hold you up, because we're not meant to do this on our own.
Yeah.
And I think that I remember the day I lost my job. I remember the morning I got the phone call. I literally I'm in my basement. I was in my kitchen, came down to the basement. I said to Becca, it happened. She's like, okay, we're going to get through this. I went upstairs, went back to sleep because that's what you do. And I called my boys. I was like, boys, it happened. And they're like, hey, we got you. And one of my buddy Adam Hoskins was like, you'll be fine in a couple of weeks. Don't worry. Someone's going to pick you up. You'll be fine. Like, you need that. To those of you who are struggling, I might not know you, but we might not be people, but I got you. And other people have you. The love of God and the love of your people are so much more needed now. And we know that now because we're not even able to really be together right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're not even able to be in the same space. So for those of you who are struggling, the love of God casts out all fear.
Yeah, so good.
Casts out all fear.
That's so good. I love that. I think what I'll end on is that God is perfect in all his ways. We are not. And so when you see failings and woundings and us really not rising to the honor of being a resurrection people, those that have been wounded by the church that are listening, that have been let down by the church that are listening, know that, our failings as people is not a reflection of who God is.
Mm-hmm.
And so many times we pin the sins of mankind around us, or the church, right on God. And God is flawless. He is perfect in all his ways. And he loves you with an unending, unconditional love. Don't let what you see paint a picture of who God is, because it's not a true picture.
Okay, now we call the band in. Now we do. Prior to that, they were holding the E flat as Cheryl was kind of closing in that story and literally landing the plane and bringing it down.
That soft chord pad,
the soft chord back chord, and just kind of holding it there. There you go. There you go. Bread of life. There we go. Here we go.
Chris Chase, as I anticipated, you are a breath. You are a rush, a tornado of fresh air. I am so thankful for you. We need you here in Canada. The Church of God needs you. And man, I am going to ask you to do just one thing. No matter what the pressures are around you, do not change, my friend.
Listen, there's so many
and
people,
I will say that for myself too.
Yeah, I already know that if I did that, like, you'd be the first person going like, "What the heck are you doing?"
Do not conform.
Yeah, I don't like this happened earlier. You didn't see it, but I said a joke to Cheryl, and she pushed her hair back as I just say, like, "What are you saying?" I don't want that in real life happening to me, so I'm not allowed to.
No, and we there have to be those like the wild ones, like John the Baptist crying out in the wilderness in an unorthodox, unprofessional way, and I live for those people. Chris, thank you for being on the path, and we are so blessed. I cannot wait to have you back, my friend.
Let's do it. Thank you so much for having me.
Guys, I hope that you loved the conversation as much as I did. I was so challenged. And I think that is what we need right now. I want a Christianity that I can live out, where I'm held accountable, made better. And sometimes we sweep things under the rug. And I'm so thankful that we lifted the rug up today and took a good hard look at where we are as a people. Sometimes change is not comfortable, and it is so important for us to be honest about where we're at, where we are not, and how far we need to go. And I hope that this conversation challenged you in some way and encouraged you and gave you some hope as well. We have the most incredible news, and that is that Jesus is alive. The Bible says that the same power that rose Jesus Christ from the dead lives in us. My prayer for you and I is that we walk that out daily and know what that truly means. Until then, keep living, keep learning, keep loving, and I'll see you on the path.
Thanks for listening. Please like, download, and subscribe. This has been an Exousia Media production.